Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. A body found in Ankh-Morpork's only dwarven bread bakery. The owner, Mr. Strong in the Arm, was killed by blunt force trauma to the head with one of his own war baguettes. No one knows who could have done this, but I found smears of white clay around the crime scene. Could be a golem. People aren't careful with what they bake. They might kiln someone. Yeah! Bum, bum, bum. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today guys, today I'm going to be talking about Boosh, Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett. This is book 3, book tres in both Spanish and Latin of the City Watch series of the Discworld books. And guys, let me just go ahead and get out of the way. It's so good. It's so good. And this, I've already done a review on Guards, which is my favorite of all time, and Men at Arms, which I really liked. And before, I think before I read this is like the 4th time I've read A Feet of Clay, but certainly the first time in at least 10 years. I think before this, I always liked Men at Arms better, and Feet of Clay like the least out of the 3. But upon this reread, some of these themes kind of hit a little harder with me, and struck a different chord with me, to where I really enjoyed Feet of Clay this second time around, despite the fact that it does start a little slowly. It takes a little bit to get going, but once it does, man, I could not be pulled away. So, the conceit here, the plot of Feet of Clay, is yet another mystery. There's always a mystery, and they always involve an attempt on the patrician Vetinari's life. There are still people who are trying to remove Vetinari and replace him with some other form of government, usually a king. That was the plot of the first one, that was the plot of the second one, and that's the plot of this one as well. Now, there are always subplots involved in this, and there's different ways that that's happening, and by different people and for different reasons. And that's what makes this fantastic. As we know, by this point, Vimes is the commander of the Watch. He's no longer captain because he's married to Ramkin, so he's one of the nobles now, being married to one of the richest women in Ankh-Morpork, but he's still he's still in charge of the Watch. Carrot really watches them day to day with all the minute by minute things, but they're all working under Vimes' leadership. And we get a lot of the best of Vimes here going on his own and investigating, while we see the other members of the Watch kind of working together in groups and pairs. And so this book heavily features golems. If you don't know what a golem is a clay man. It is it's from kind of rabbinic lore. It is a clay figure of a man whose head flips open and you shove words in it. And they're governed by what's called the chem, or chem, which is the writings in their head, and they can only follow the orders that are written in their head. They're kind of like robots that are programmed to do something. They don't have free will of their own, or do they? That's really one of the main premises of Feet of Clay. And something weird is happening with some of the golems in the city. The golems kind of work, they're like free labor that work tirelessly day in and day out because they don't need breaks. They don't have to sleep, they don't have to eat, they just work as they're told. But they're really expensive, and something weird's happening with the golems of the city and all of that. So some murders have been happening, something weird's happening with the golems, there's a plot against Vetinari, and so these 3 threads kind of branch out and dovetail together in really interesting ways. And so that's the plot. Pratchett here is in full form. His prose is just amazing. Guys, I'm currently working on a kind of before you read Discworld video where I talk about all things Discworld and kind of where you should start and which ones are my favorites and kind of the path you should take and really everything that I can think of to say about Discworld. But one of the things that you're going to hear over and over is I don't know an author working today. I don't know of another author. And one viewer commented since Shakespeare. Whoa, those are high words of praise. And I'm not saying I disagree, but Pratchett, his mastery of the English language and every word he uses and the choices he makes with his word choice, how he uses homophones and homonyms and kind of malapropisms, the way he just uses the English language to his advantage, it is marvelous to behold. If you are an aspiring author Like, you should read Discworld for the sole purpose of looking at Pratchett's prose, looking at how he uses the English language, how he turns it into a shield or sword or net, however he needs it, he shapes it to his will. A masterful command. Like, you can get something out of Pratchett every single time you read it. You can get something new as your kind of knowledge base grows. There's so many things you can miss if, like, you miss a reference or you don't know what this particular word means. But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the books. You can absolutely enjoy them, but every subsequent reread, you can get even more out of them. And he's in full, I just love it here. I love the way he does word choice. And I'm just gonna go ahead and give you some of my favorite examples. Now, this is British humor, and it's word humor, it's puns, or as they say, I don't know why Discworld, in every Discworld book, when they talk about puns, they say puns, comma, or play on words. They always tell you what a pun is, just in case you weren't aware. But the plays on words in this one are just in rare form. So in one, a doctor is seeing the patrician, right? And he's a horse doctor, so, you know, he's not used to dealing with people, but used to dealing with horses, but they call him in because they can trust him and they know that the horse doctor's not going to try to kill the patrician. And so the patrician opens his eyes and says, "You are a doctor, aren't you?" Donut Jimmy gave him an uncertain look. He was not used to patients who could talk. Well, yeah. I have a lot of patience, he said. Indeed? I have very little, said the patrician. I love that. I love that. Patience, P-A-T-I-E-N-T-S versus P-A-T-I-E-N-C-E. Like, I just love it. And I know, I don't care if you don't think it's funny. I think it is hilarious. There's another one where they're talking to a golem in a slaughterhouse, right? And so they're asking the golem what it does all day, and the golem says, the golem's like, I work all the time. I've been here all the time. And they're like, you work 24 hours a day? And it's like, yes, men and trolls here on every shift. They will tell you, during the day I must slaughter, dress, quarter, joint, and bone, and at night, without rest, I must make sausages and boil up the livers, hearts, tripes, kidneys, and chitterling. That's awful, said Cheery. Close, said the golem. Now think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. It talks about like livers and hearts and kidneys and all that crap that it has to cut up all day. And then the dwarf says, that's awful. And the golem says, close. Boom! He's talking about offal, O-F-F-A-L, which is like kind of the leavings, like the discarding of like meat and you know, dead bodies, like the cast-offs, like chum kind of. But the dwarf says that's awful, A-W-F-U-L, which is why he says close. Awful, awful. Guys, this is so brilliant. I mean, and that's just one of many. I'm not gonna do any other ones, but there are many, many more in there. And that's just the kind of brilliant stuff that I love. If your funny bone was tickled by those things, I don't know why you're not reading Pratchett already. There are even more that aren't just puns, just the way he describes things. There's one thing where he talks about something heavy's being swung, and he says, it swung like a planet without any apparent speed, but with a drifting unstoppability. And that is so perfect for what is happening. It is so descriptive, while at the same time being like, something that you would not think of to write yourself. I read these books not just for the plots, but for that command of language there. So going into the characters, we've got Vimes. Guys, Vimes is he's still the everyman. He is still fighting for justice. He cannot stand the rich people that he has to, and the nobles that he has to kind of mingle with. We see he still struggles with alcoholism. The bottles of whiskey continue to call his name, and we have to see him fight against that, especially when things get difficult and people start dying and he can't really find a break in the case. I mean, alcohol has been his coping mechanism for so long that we still see him struggle with that. Carrot is still in rare form, being kind of the straight man. In this, we've got Angua, his werewolf girlfriend, she's wanting to leave. She wants to leave the watch and go back to Uberwald because she knows it's never going to work out between her and Carrot, because even though Carrot knows she's a werewolf and is kind to her, she knows that he you know, it kind of bothers him, but not that she's a werewolf. It bothers him that other people treat her differently and treat her crappy because she's the undead. In addition, the newest member of the Watch is a dwarf named Cheery Littlebottom, and he's brought in as kind of the alchemist. He's the forensic expert. So we get even more of the CSI thing here when he comes in and like he does little tests on the residues at the crime scenes and deals, you know, doesn't have any eyebrows because he blows things up all the time. He's a really good and fun, kind of shy addition, and we learn more and more about him. That's one of the best things about Feet of Clay is learning more about Cheery Littlebottom, and Vimes tries to keep it very calm when the dwarf tells him that his name is Cheery Littlebottom, and he's like, maybe you didn't hear me, sir, and Vimes is like, no, I heard you, what's the problem? My name is Cheery Littlebottom, and Vimes is like, yeah, okay, trying to keep a straight face because it's such a ridiculous name. We've still got Vimes kicking every anthill he can, ticking off everybody above him. Vimes is a cop. People keep expecting him, because he's now part of the upper crust, to kind of adhere and conform to that lifestyle. But Vimes he doesn't take the hat off. He's a watchman. That is who he is. That is his identity. Vimes cannot discard his mantle of watchman any more than any of us can shed our skin and become a completely different creature. Vimes is the Watch, and no matter of social climbing is ever going to change that. And that is one of the things I just love about Vimes. If you have read these books, you know Vimes is the heart and soul of the Watch books. And we see Vimes, he was kind of sidelined toward the end of Men-at-Arms. Here we see Vimes just in full form, kicking the tires and lighting the fires. There's a scene at the end, there's usually a scene at the end between someone and the patrician. And the one here between Vimes and the patrician is a masterclass in creating tension, blending that tension with comedy, with subtext to what people are saying, having to read under what they're actually saying. If you've read this book, you know this scene. People should study this scene. It's just so good and so tense and yet so hilarious, so hilariously, tonally dissonant. It's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. Let me talk about the themes of Feet of Clay, because really in Men-at-Arms he does a lot with kind of like racism and cultural racism. Here, Pratchett deals a lot with what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be alive? What is slavery? And also how much does blood and breeding matter? And all three of these things come up a ton. Well, first of all, we see the racism thing in that no matter who you are and no matter how much people hate you, there's always someone else that you can hate. It's like the chain of screaming from How I Met Your Mother.
And I don't want that! I don't want any of this! This is not why I became a lawyer! This is not the person that I wanted to be! I quit! Arthur, I quit!
So, Angua is used to being hated because, you know, she's a werewolf, but she hates golems because she's undead, but golems are not alive. They are unalive. And so she thinks they're creepy. She doesn't like golems, so she's kind of struggling with her prejudices there. We see a lot of dealing with golems and free will and slavery and life and sentience and whether or not they really have a life or a spirit or a soul. Like when they're talking with that slaughterhouse golem and they learn that it works 24 hours a day and doesn't get paid and doesn't get time off and doesn't rest. One of the watchmen asks Angua, like, isn't that slavery? And she's like, what are you kidding me? Like, what? Like, can you enslave a doorknob? And it's just so profound, and it really it struck me at least. It just gets you with a gut punch because this thing it talks. It can talk on its little, they don't speak. They have these little slates that they write on with chalk. And it's commanded by the chem in its head, but it is moving around. It can answer questions. It can speak. It just has been created and told what to do. So is it alive? But Angua's like callous comment about how can you enslave a doorknob, this keeps coming up. And it's really, really good, deep stuff to think and talk about. There comes a time where the Watch can kind of get what they need to do by changing the chem in a golem's head. And Carrot, because of course we love Carrot, Carrot refuses to alter the chem in this golem's head, even though it would break open the case. It would give them a vast advantage for what they're trying to do. But he refuses to do it because he believes in free will. Even though the golem doesn't really have free will, he refuses to impose his own will of the moment onto that golem. And there's this big argument of, well, does it have free will? Is it a robot? Is it wrong to tell kind of an automaton what to do? If it's created to follow orders, is it wrong to give it orders? Can it have desires of its own? Can it have a will of its own? And guys, it's heartbreaking to watch what these golems are struggling with. The things that is happening with these golems, I mean, it really is heartbreaking when the mystery is revealed and everything's laid bare. Like, I had to just stop and pause and just like the feels got me for golems. I mean, it's brilliant what Pratchett has done here. It's absolutely, it's fascinating. And all while there's just this page turning like murder mystery, and it's still hilarious. Pratchett is the best at blending absurdism with just real deep philosophical questions. And last on the golems, like, can you kill what isn't alive? If you kill a golem, have you committed murder or have you just committed destruction of property? Again, all dealing with what is it to be alive. Now, the other thing that's kind of wrestling in here is breeding and how some people are better than others because of how they were born, and about how society treats people from certain bloodlines better than people from other bloodlines, and whether or not society is right that way. Is society meant to be run by that? Aristocracy means government by the best. Is there a reason that aristocracy exists in order to keep that kind of social order? And you know, Vimes hates this. And whenever he hears people talk about breeding and how they're better than someone because of their breeding, even though he is now, and it also ticks him off that people lump him in with the people that talk like that just because he himself is a noble now by marriage. There's one part where people have died, people have been murdered, and someone says, they're questioning someone, and someone says, well, were they important? And Carrot says, you are so lucky that Mr. Vimes isn't here, because if Vimes heard someone say to the response of these people have been murdered, were they important? Vimes would kill them. Vimes would just beat them within an inch of their life. And that is what I love so much about Vimes. My justice bone just cries out to be led in Revolution by Samuel Vimes. Guys, this is a fantastic book. I love this, and just the themes just resonated with me so much more than they did the last time I read it. And so on the Kingfin approval system, I give Feet of Clay, it's a superb to superb plus. I may not like it quite as much as Guards because, yeah, maybe I do. I don't know. It's definitely superb to superb plus, one of those. Out of 5 stars, it's 5 stars, easily. 5 stars for that frickin' scene with Vimes and the Patrician alone. So, you absolutely should keep reading this. I don't know why you wouldn't want to read this if you've already read up through Men at Arms. It's hilarious, it's thoughtful, it's poignant. It is so good. So good, guys, so good. A couple people from my Discord, we're gonna be buddy reading Jingo, the next one, in December. It's me and Katrina and Kaisa, I think. So that's gonna be super exciting to actually have someone to read it with. So cool. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. The link to my Patreon and Discord is down in the description. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, I will see you next time.